vibes.
Thank you for tuning in to the Push It Forward Podcast Network. I'm your humbled executive producer, Harut, and this is the Cosmic Convos podcast. On Cosmic Convos, Brother Ra and myself gets into how to utilize sidereal astrology as a powerful organizing tool for your life. Whether you're talking about starting a family, getting married, raising children, starting a business, going into a new career, what career you need to choose, and a whole host of other topics relevant to everyone's life. All right. Make sure you check us out on Patreon, where we release exclusive content to all of our patrons, and you get the opportunity to directly interact with us and ask questions and even help us determine the shows that we cover on our weekly podcast. All right. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy.
You are now tuned in to the Cosmic Convos podcast, your number one source for accurate, relevant, and thought-provoking astrological conversations in the podcast nation, the place where stars and minds align.
Peace. You're now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humble host, Harut. And I got my good brother here, Brother Ra. How you doing?
Oh, brother, keeping my eyes to the sky and ears to the street. How about you, man?
Hey, man, like I always say, man, you know, trying to get a little bit, just a little bit like you, my brother. Just a little bit.
Oh, if you're trying to get a little, brother, it seems like you got a lot. So be good, man. Definitely.
I appreciate
Sure.
that, man. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Yeah, but before we get too far, I want to remind you all, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel, and you hit that notification bell so you can know when new content is dropping. And let's get into it. And this episode is brought to you by Zencastr. And, you know, me and Ra, you know, we're in two different time zones, two different sides of the country. And, you know, definitely when we first got started and everything, Zencastr was the way that we were able to, you know, sound like we're in the same room while we're doing this podcast from the very beginning. And it's enabled us to, you know, kind of really take advantage of, you know, the modern technology and everything like that, and be able to have a podcast like this without being in the same place and still sound seamless. So if you're interested in starting a podcast, or you can utilize this platform for a number of different things, look in the description, and there's a promo code for 30% off your first month of subscription for Zencastr. So definitely big up to Zencastr, all right? And also, this episode is brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group, Caliprucia Astrology, and our people over there on Patreon. Big up to y'all. Indeed, if you wanna join the Patreon, you can get to that from the links inside of the description. And if you want to connect with us on social media, you can follow us on Instagram at Cosmic Convo. That's CosmicConvo on Instagram, and from there you can get to, you know, my personal Instagram page. You can get to Ra's Instagram page. You can get to everything that we got going on related to Cosmic Convos from there. All right, Ra, how can the people get a hold of you?
You can definitely hit me up via Facebook or IG at Shechem Ra, or you can even hit me up on Facebook via Caliprucia Astrology. There, you can actually reach out to me if you want to schedule an appointment, and we can definitely get you in the books. My website is down temporarily. Mercury retrograde type stuff. Everyone knows about that, but it is CalipruciaAstrology.com. It should be up within about 4 to 5 days once we get some kinks worked out and some things going. But that is a website that is available in the future. And also, you can follow me on Twitter as well at Kalaparusha Astrology. So pretty much every platform except TikTok, you can find me.
We're gonna get on there soon. We
Yeah,
gotta find it. We got a library so thick that we can chop up a billion clips and put them on TikTok. So,
true.
yeah. So we'll probably be on TikTok, at sooner than you think. Indeed, indeed. All right, but here we are, and apologies for the delays. We both been very, very busy. As you all know, I'm a filmmaker and I just finished up production for my third short film. Big up to that. So that'll be coming out real soon. Be on the lookout for that trailer when we drop it. And if you haven't, subscribe to Ninth Lord Films. It's on here. If you go to this channel, you'll see it, in under a section called Content Family. Subscribe there. Subscribe to Calipurusha YouTube channel as well, because that's on there as well. And then also, my other podcast, the First We Build podcast, which has been growing pretty fast recently. So definitely go subscribe to the whole family and everything we got going on. All right. But, been doing that, a lot of client work and different things like that. So our schedules have been a little off, but, we're going to do a little better job about that. But, here we are. We're here at season 5, and, the season finale, right? This is episode 125. All right. It's a lot of work, each of those episodes is at least an hour and 15 minutes long. That's conservatively, really is more like an hour and a half. Right? So you do the math on that, hour 15 minutes, 125 episodes. That's a lot of hours of content, you can literally listen to the podcast for days on end, nonstop, right? So definitely big up to that. And, we got an interesting topic that we want to cover today. But before we get rolling into that, Rod, did you have any announcements or anything like that you wanted to impart on the people before we get into today's topic? I think you're muted.
No, I'm good. Today's topic is definitely going to be quite the filler.
Indeed. Okay. So, there's been a lot of talk, especially recently, about the nuances of the Black community, right? There's been a time period where, it's like, hey, we just all Black. You know what I'm saying? And, it is what it is from there. But as of recent years, there's been a kind of a revitalized movement for, in particular, Black people, who are who've been in America for centuries, to distinguish themselves, right? And and kind of hone in on the issues that are specific to Black Americans. There's a bunch of terms out there: foundational Black Americans, American descendants of slaves, freedmen, all type of different terms out there. And then, we also get into the conversation about, reparations and, different things like that. And then the general condition of the Black community in general, right? The contributions that we've made. And, we start getting into talks about like the actual kind of culture of Black Americans and, the things that we've accomplished. And, like I was just saying, the things that we've contributed to America and really honestly the modern world in general. And when it comes down to astrology, what we do here on this podcast, that to be able to really intelligently talk about that, we gotta, be able to rectify a chart to be able to look at that and to see, kind of, put some objectivity and some, some bones to, why, black people may function a particular way, some of our assets, some of our liabilities, and where's the general direction that the black community is going. We could be able to look at, some of the things that we've gone through and why we have some of the problems that we have. And, kind of like I was just saying, what we could do in the future. So today, and we've been kind of teasing at it and talking about it a little bit. Those who are on Patreon, we did an episode on Patreon where we were kind of talking about it, going through some of the, data that we utilize to be able to rectify this chart and things like that. But without further ado, we're going to talk about the chart or the destiny of Black America. And this is really, I mean, I'm sure, because especially in modern times, this is a, other nationalities within the black community kind of sharing this chart, but at its core, this is specific to black Americans here in the United States. So big up to that. You ain't gonna find this on nobody else's channel, by the way.
No,
Without a
you're
doubt.
not even close.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting that I'm seeing a lot of conversations about the black community and what makes us tick. You
Right.
know, what is the engine behind what motivates black people, especially in America? Um, label. I've heard some definite attributes subscribed to the black community. Some of which definitely hold weight. And I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to make Black America a monolith, right?
Right.
But at the same time, when we check the pulse of Black America, um, it's easy to see when we do that how where our mindset for the most part really is, and you can gauge it by the music, um,
Mm-hmm.
the entertainment, um, you know, the positions that we've been afforded, the progress, quote unquote, that we've made. All of
Mm-hmm.
that, even adding up, you still see there's a theme of disenfranchisement with black people. That's
Right.
just because of the nature of slavery, right? Shadow slavery, what it does and what it entails and what it does to a people. And, it's not just the simple fact that if slavery was over and then, we are still involved in a process of trying to liberate ourselves, so to speak. So, when we look at the destiny of black people in America, it's an interesting thing to note that the statement of America holds true that you are considered three-fifths of a man. Yes, I know there's amendments, right? But the initial purview of Africans in America was that you are property,
Right.
right? You are three-fifths of a human being, right? Not four-fifths, three-fifths. So, right? So when you begin to understand the view, right, of black people in the beginnings of America, and that view how it's reverberated and almost supplanted itself in our subconscious, so that even though we're not in that state or condition, quote unquote, we still
Right.
act like it, right? We still act like, right, we're in that position of being property. And we're going to talk about it here in a minute, and it's going to be interesting to see how well and how accurate this particular chart describes us and why we are plagued and challenged with certain things. When you create something, it has a beginning and an end date. That's why we use astrology to find out what was created, right?
Right.
What was birthed, what was manifested, what was brought down, what was generated. Well, the astrology doesn't lie, and sometimes we don't like to hear certain things about ourselves. But the truth hurts, and also truth shall what? Set you
Set you
free.
free.
And so we are, as a people that have been in bondage, need to be set free so that we can understand how we've been calibrated, how we've been created and placed in a position to be as we are. This is not something that is just arbitrary. The universe has a divine order. And in that divine order, everybody plays a role. Well, your role and our role and the role of black people in America has been one of which has been a powerhouse, right? The powerhouse of America is black people. The backbone of America is black people. Well, let's take a look at the chart to see how, right, really are the backbone of this country, right? We really are the undergirding entity that keeps the machine running.
Right.
And when you look at it, it's interesting. We've got a birth time of February the 1st, 1865.
A lot of people might be a little shocked by that date, right? Because of, everybody's into the whole Juneteenth thing. But you know, the way that we arrived at that date is really based on that's the date that um all of the states basically had ratified the 13th Amendment.
Right.
Okay. Except for Mississippi. Technically. But in general, from this point on, um, you know, slaves were technically free in the eyes of the law.
Right.
Right.
Technically.
Yeah.
And when we say technically, we have movies like 12 Years a Slave,
Right.
right? That shows the technicalities. You could get caught up, still taken back, but you're free. And that's a good way of stating what we see here is that, remember, we're 3/5 of a human being. You were considered, the African was considered chattel. He was considered chattel. No more, no less than a animal that plows and picks and pulls and serves. That was the idea for black people in America.
Not not to
And go ahead.
not to cut you off, but there's an interesting thing about February 1st, right? Do you know
Mm-hmm.
that it's technically a holiday?
Really?
It's National Freedom Day.
Isn't that something?
Based on this date that we picked. So I didn't initially when I was looking at what and that
Right.
didn't because no one. I mean, you ever heard of National Freedom Day?
I've
No,
never heard of
right?
it before.
So yeah, they actually made it a holiday. President Truman did in
Mm.
1949. He made it a holiday.
Wow, isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
Wow, that's deep. On that day, National Freedom Day, right? The 13th Amendment is ratified. And so that day is supposedly the day when we become recognized. We become in, we're entitled to American you know, freedoms.
Right.
We're set free, so to speak. And the reason why we come up with this time of noon at 12:07, when you do research and you find when does Congress meet, when do these things transact, when does the signings happen, how long do they meet, those types of things, and what's tradition. The Senate doesn't usually start till right around about 10 o'clock, right, good brother? That's what we kind of found, is about 10, 9ish, 10ish.
Yeah.
10 o'clock is when they start. And so by around noon, right, on this day, I'm sure this is something that had been um, talked about, discussed, weighed, deliberated, and of course, judgment was rendered. But the
Well,
time in which, go ahead,
you had the Emancipation Proclamation
right,
prior to Civil War just ended.
right.
So this is all this is
This is all the result,
yeah.
right, of those processes.
Mm-hmm.
And the result bears, right, and we did our homework. We pretty much adjusted this, backward and forward to see what would be. Of course, there's limits, there's cutoffs. You're not going to
Right.
be at 8 o'clock at night doing anything. You're not going to be 6 a.m. doing anything. So we narrowed it to a window. And when you do that, there's only so many ascendants that can fit into that window. And so when you go through the ascendants and you process, of course, and you analyze and look at, of course, time frames, events, circumstances, deaths, all kinds of things, when you narrow it down, right, it gets really narrow quickly because there's certain things that just don't fit. Like, for example, Cancer ascendant just doesn't fit,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's just no way we are Cancer ascendant by any means of the stretch of the imagination. We're not a people that are oriented around home life. I know, despite what you may think, right? We're not a people that's oriented around patriotism, around education. We're gaining that, and there are things in the chart that we're going to talk about that will indicate what we're about. But for the most part, right, Cancer is very protective and very up. The community is what is the fundamental focus, and that is just not what Black people have done in the long term scope of things. I'm not talking about intervals or periods. I'm talking about the totality of Africans in America. Right, our family has been destroyed.
Right. Right.
Not something that we can see because of a break and a segue and a rebirth, that we've regained or rebuilt or reconstructed that part of our 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 our, our being. We're not family or community oriented. Some of us can be, but we're not really. And when I say family, I mean the fourth house, not the second, the fourth. Cancer is more oriented around the immediate environment of the people that you live with, the city you're from, the area you're from, the tribe you're from, right?
Right.
Our tribes fight, right? We fight amongst ourselves. So, and not to say other races don't, but we do. And we do in a way and such that it becomes publicly uh, merchandised. Our aggression is merchandised,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our aggression is put on a album cover and sold. Our aggression is put in a movie, right, and made millions of dollars. Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, right? Our aggression, our internal beefs they make money from ours. It's an engine to their success.
Right.
So when you look at this particular framework, Taurus as the ascendant, it makes perfect sense. We Taurus in and of itself, what does Taurus represent? Money,
Yes. Money, personal wealth.
personal wealth, materialism, values,
Hmm.
pleasures, music, good food, jewelry, luxury. It represents chattel. Cow is a chattel, right?
Right.
Isn't that interesting how it's chattel
Hmm.
and we were chattel slaves? So I want you to think about it. You didn't really win your independence. It was given to you. That's how you know it's not Aries.
Right.
See, Aries we would have fought and won our independence. No, we fought alongside of and behind, and the independence was a byproduct, but independence wasn't the independence for Africans was not the real modus operandi of the war. It was to weaken the South's financial and economic infrastructure, of which Africans in America were primary and key to that particular way of life for the South. So it wasn't about freeing us, it was about weakening the South's economic and financial wherewithal. And it worked. But we never freed ourselves. So it's a byproduct. It's given to us. And when it's given to you, you get what you're what? You're given.
Right.
And
Let me,
Taurus, oh yeah, brother.
yeah. So let me ask you a question about that because I just sparked something. Comparing that, because I guess another group of people who could compare in regards to not necessarily actually fighting themselves
Mm-hmm.
um, for their freedom is of course your Ashkenazi Jews, your Jews out of Jewish people out of Eastern Europe at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Would you firstly would you look at the Israel chart? We did an episode on that. Definitely go check that out. Would you look at that chart as being the chart that kind of spark like kind of almost comparable to how we're looking at the Black American chart, or would you look at would you do another calculation for the actual um you know I guess so-called um freeing of the Jewish
Mm-hmm.
people?
Good question. The freeing of Jewish people, of course, with the end of World War II,
Mm-hmm.
and the the repaying of those families that were destroyed through the Holocaust, um, through the Nazis' torture and treatment of them. Um, they they the let's look at it from this perspective. You have a you have a conglomerate or a amalgam of you have an entity, right?
Mm-hmm.
That entity changes multiple times in order to become its final result.
Right.
So the Israel date and time is the last of a process,
Mm-hmm.
but there's another integer or there's an intermediary thing that happened for them to come out of the condition in which they were placed in during World War II. And I would
Right.
use the date when the first camp, you know what I mean? That first camp,
Mm-hmm.
we could probably find it, but the first real, camp was concentration camp. That first one on that date that was released would be kind of an intermediary. You know what I mean? Because you're being released, you don't have a home, right? You don't have a land. All you have is an identity, just like
Mm-hmm.
Africans in America, right? And we have an identity, but we have no land, right?
Right.
Or we're owed 40 acres and a mule, if that's where you want to take it. But there's no land. So we have an identity, but no place to call home. They had an
Right.
identity and they had an
And they
agenda to get someplace to call home. In the meantime, they were repaid. They were given not loans, money and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, if you really wanted to talk about what that looks like, you would use that first date when the concentration camps were just when it was shut down and all of them were beginning to be freed. I would use that as probably the middle of the ground, and then use the actual Israel chart to see, what this people, now that they've concretized, and not only do they have an identity, but they have a nationality, right?
right.
And then from there, compare the contrast of two to show the stages of development from being free to becoming a nation. So we're not a nation, right? We are
Right.
freed people. And so in that free people, you could use that chart, which the concentration camps were released, and the chart, because remember, this is kind of like we're released from the slave plantation, which is another what concentration camp, isn't it?
Right.
Right. So the analogy would be like that, if that makes sense to you.
Indeed. Okay.
So
Maybe that's another that's we could do because there's a date for that. There's a date. There's a date for that.
yeah, we could use that,
Yeah.
right, and surmise, what I mean, what
Mm-hmm.
happened between 1940, such and such, and 1960, or was it 19? When did they become a nation?
1948.
1948, right?
Yeah.
So what we got here is Taurus. I mean, Taurus has a long list of attributes, but as I've listed so far, are we not pretty materialistic so far?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, when you are chattel slavery, you don't get the benefits of being able to be a part of an establishment where money is so easily circulated and flows. And so when you are birthed, you're born as Taurus ascendant, you now have the mentality of a right, of chattel
Right. Yeah, because it's May 8th, 1984. I mean, 1945 is the date
for the release for the
for the
first.
release
Yep.
when the
So we would use
Holocaust
that
ended.
date compared to this as a similar comparison.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And if we ever to acquire land, then we can make that comparison to Israel as a nation, because we would then have a state. But until then, right, we're floating around. So this Taurus ascendant, right, has create. And remember, you just came out of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the sign is going to tell you the story. You just came out of slavery. You are still considered a slave to a degree,
Right.
right? Now it's time to so-called repair. And when this reparations, quote unquote reparations, was beginning, right? You have to understand when it's called the Reconstruction era.
Right.
The Reconstruction era is kind of like, in a way, if you want to make an analogy, right? It's kind of like them paying us back, in a way. That's when you were promised 40 acres and a mule.
Right.
So in the 1800s, late 1800s, and the 1870s and 80s was the Reconstruction era, right? So black folks were, when we say Reconstruction, of course, we're talking about the nation as a whole is being reconstructed from the battle of the North and the South, but we're also talking about those people that were disenfranchised, right, that were the descendants of slaves. And that Reconstruction era allowed us as a people to integrate into the scheme of American society. We had land. We had we were in Congress. We had businesses. We had all the things that you would think that would be able to repair us. But if you look at the chart, interestingly enough, take a look to see when we were freed. We were free during a K2 period
Right. In the 12th house.
in the 12th house. So our emancipation and freedom was someone else's loss, right? It's 12th to us as well,
Right.
but you got to consider, right, severing or breaking or cutting ties. Well, we didn't really cut ties, did we? We just were
Not really.
reorganized into a label,
Right.
Black America. So
Negro.
K2 is the jump off. K2's in the
Hmm.
12th. The 12th house is the house of letting go,
Right.
surrender. So for us, it was a letting go and a surrendering. Remember, you're Taurus ascendant, so you still don't have the financial wherewithal that you were supposed to have and that should have been repaid to you as descendants of slaves. So from the 1870s to 1880s, 1880, mid 1880s, we see a Reconstruction era. Black people are making progress. African Americans are getting positions. We're out owning business. We're owning land. We're in position, and something happens, right? They change their mind and begin to institute Jim Crow.
Right.
Now, if you take a look at the dashas, Jim Crow starts in the 18 late 1880s. Look at 1890. 1890 is the Sun Dasha, right? Share what? Cropping, right?
Right.
What house of a chart rules land?
Fourth.
What rules the fourth?
Sun.
Hence sharecropping.
Right.
It's in the Saturn ruled sign. It's in the sixth house from itself. Sixth house is what? Service and debt, is it not?
Yep.
So even though we were given land, we were still under the service of the sun, which is the what? The government.
Government.
Sharecropping. Crazy how it works, huh? Right. From the sun dasha all the way to the moon in 1886. Now we're in the moon for 10 years. 1800s is a very strange crossing over type period where we're leaving somewhat of a agrarian farmer to a more industrialized process.
Right.
And black people, right, at that time, the moon is in the 12th house. Do you know how disenfranchising it is to a people that were at one point you were the main means of making things happen? Now you are no longer significant in that matter. We don't need you anymore. You become an outcast, a pariah in your own society. The moon in the 12th house, correct?
Right. Right.
You're a satellite that operates around the centerpiece of America. You go around us, right? We go from 1800s to 1906. Mars is in there, right? This is right before World One, or near or close to World War One, and Mars is in the ascendant. And you must understand, right? You were utilized. So Mars ruling the 7th and the 12th in that dasha period, right? We try to link or bond or connect with another, 7th house partners, but that partner or the partnership is connected to the 12th house of expenditure and sacrifice. Of who? Of you, of the first house, of the individual, of the nation, of the people. So during World War One, we thought we could have ourselves a meal ticket. Didn't work.
World War One comes 1914.
Right around,
Uh,
right. So right at the precipice of change in Rahu,
right.
Mars is there. So that makes sense. So even more so, Rahu is the confusion that you think you're going to be participating in something that's going to benefit you as a whole. And it's interesting. It is in the sixth house of war, so it makes perfect sense. But again, right? Rahu is a period, the Roaring Twenties, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how disenfranchised Black people were during the Roaring Twenties? I mean, the gangster whole thing that people see now, right? That was in play then. We're talking about um, um, I can't think of the name of the process where liquor is legalized. When is
Oh,
liquor legalized?
you're talking about
Oh, what's the name of the
it'll
area?
come.
It's on the
It'll
tip of
come.
my yeah. Um,
Bootlegging
prohibition. There we go.
prohibition. Yeah.
And prohibition was the Roaring Twenties, right? Prohibition was the Roaring Twenties. So you got to see, right? Our Rahu is right there with it. So you got to see, like during this time period, Jupiter is in the seventh house of Scorpio, seventh house in Scorpio, also showing. Now this is a time when I would surmise, excuse me, that Black people are actually to some degree really focused on trying to create um a solid foundation for family, a solid foundation for community. Jupiter is in the seventh. That is probably one of the more beneficial periods, and I would imagine because we're in the 30s all the way up into the 40s to the end of
Well,
World War II. Go ahead.
so even from the 20s, um, that's where you see all the cities, you know,
Okay.
begin to really honestly prior to the 20s. That's where you
Right.
see like your Tulsas and
Well, wait. We didn't even go there, right?
mhm,
Black Wall Street.
right.
What year was Black Wall Street?
Um, so it started back. Let me see. I know that it ended in 1921.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Okay. So Rahu.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Rahu. So, you know what I mean? And think about it. If you look at it, Rahu is in the sixth house. It's with Saturn, right? It's hard work. I mean, it is a Shaprit Yog, but Saturn is exalted. So it kind of mitigates some of the negative effects that can come out of that particular combination. But it's the sixth house of service, work, effort. So, and I mean, effort, I mean, consistent effort. Digging down deep, getting your hands and nails dirty type effort with Saturn there. So it does make sense for us to have experience that kind of, you know, drive and desire to, make a better way. Rahu is that drive and desire that need to get out of the rut, that need to get out of the circumstance, and need to get out of the status quo, the need to elevate, the need to jump and leap into another trajectory. And we tried, didn't we? Black Wall
Right.
Street was an excellent example of trying to leap into the next level, right? But as we already know, we're cut down short. Of course, the society has it built within that there's destruct mechanisms anytime we get to a certain level of self sufficiency.
And
So
those times are those years are consistent with other black towns as well, not just Tulsa. Rosewood
right,
was
Rosewood,
destroyed
right.
in 1923.
Isn't that crazy
Um,
how Rahu is the period when those things take place and we're trying to get there.
mhm.
And Rahu's with Saturn exalted, so we're trying to make it. I mean, you give that feeling is almost, you can articulate it very well. that feeling of, how you're almost there. You could touch it. You can almost see it. You're almost in the space of getting somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden,
Boom.
right, boom, right. So this is really where you can understand how our plight, our challenges, once you're aware of these kind of windows of opportunity, right? It just is easily seen that as a people we have a long way to go. We've come a long way, but we've got even seemingly further to go than we've come, because right now, I mean, moving forward into this Saturn dasha,
Mm-hmm.
Saturn is the civil rights movement, y'all.
Right.
Look at Saturn. Civil rights in the sixth house makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Right.
And it's exalted. But there was a hidden agenda within it, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because Rahu sits there. It's crazy. It's kind of like the powers that be knew, well, they are capable. So when we get to this point, let's confuse them.
Right.
And
Right.
let's dangle these things, right, and get them into this thinking pattern. Instead of separation, right, they're looking for amalgamation and unification. And so Saturn, right, in its position was tricked. We were tricked. You wanted to, sit at the same, drink from the same water fountain and eat. Why? Have you ever stopped to think, why? Why do I want to eat with you? It's not personal. I mean, but why would I want to eat with you? Why do I want to go to school with you? You see, I mean,
You-
isn't that a trick? Isn't that like a rule? Like, if you
right.
think
And
about it,
the thing is, because the unique thing about black people in America that even separates us from the rest of the black people that endured slavery as well is that, like you mentioned at the beginning, we weren't gifted, not gifted, we weren't given a homeland. So we've remained a fish out of water. Like we've
right?
made you know America our homeland, so to speak. But even if you're talking about, if you're West Indian, you got, I mean, shoot, I mean, it wasn't around in this same period of time. That's where you see, you know, all of the basically British letting go of all of his colonies for the most part. Nigeria,
Mhm.
Jamaica, all of these countries start gaining their, so-called
Independence.
independence.
Right.
You know,
When we gained, we were trying to fight for ours.
right,
Right. So, considering this, I mean, you were tricked.
mm-hmm,
Separate but equal should have been the model that we held to. If I make myself equal but separate, I'm saying I'm putting myself on the same level playing field. See, we don't understand, and we didn't think about it because remember, we're Taurus.
right,
So your agenda is to acquire, acquisition. And who better to acquire than from the person that acquired you? So meaning that you want what they had. You wanted to go to the schools that they had. Not to say to have the same quality of your own, that's different. But you wanted to be sitting next to them because it's in your mind, in the black man's mind, black woman's mind, where I've accomplished something if I could be next to you. Not to
mm-hmm,
compete with you, but to be next to you. That's Taurus, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
Aries would compete, right? Gemini might even trick you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Gemini might say, "Well, yeah, I'll give you. Okay, yeah, let's combine, but really behind the scenes, I might be building something separate as well." So Gemini can do two things at once, right?
Right.
Cancer would have been easy, and after Cancer, that's it because the hours didn't change. Of course, we
Right.
discussed Cancer. Cancer is not a fit. So, do you see
Yeah.
how we did it? We narrowed it
Cancer
down.
would have secured some land. Would have tried to
Oh,
secure.
you better
Yeah.
believe
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
With the moon being in the 10th house from Cancer.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, we would have had land, something. So you see what I'm saying? Like you got to consider why Taurus fits the best, and it does. Even with the Dasha schemes, it fits the best. So when you look at coming out of Saturn Dasha in 1960, what I believe 19, I want to say 69. No, 1966 is when we changed from
We
Saturn
come
to
out of
Mercury.
Saturn in
Right,
1966.
right.
Mm-hmm. So
Malcolm
that's,
was killed in 65, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So almost 100 years to the date of our freedom, Malcolm was killed. Interesting, huh?
Right.
Almost 100. Exactly. It's actually 100 years. Exactly. Right. One of the individuals that was really oriented around us becoming a people, a nation, something that can hold its own. 100 years. Yeah.
Almost exactly. I mean,
Almost
February
exact. Isn't that
21st.
crazy? Yeah. I was just sitting there February, right?
Yeah.
That's
He
insane.
got killed February 21st,
And look, February 1st.
1965.
That's almost to the date 100 years. So 1966 is when we begin our Mercury Dasha period, and Mercury is what? Say it loud.
Yes.
What?
I'm black
I'm
enough.
black and proud. Right.
Right.
Voicing and articulating, speaking out, saying I'm tired, saying this is I matter, saying I'm important, saying I deserve, saying, you mean that's Mercury giving us a mouthpiece. And it rules the second and the fifth house. So at that time, we were actually trying to change. And what house is Mercury in?
Eighth. It's an eighth.
We
Eighth
were
house of
trying to change,
transition.
people. We were transforming. At that,
We did transform.
no one on the planet can disagree that that was the precipice for us to move in a different direction. Please, you can't. There's no way you could argue it.
Right.
That different direction, that change, that transformation was right there. It was at our fingertips. We didn't know what to do with it. We didn't know how to handle it. We didn't know how to approach it. And not only that, COINTELPRO was coincided with it. So there was no way for you really to understand how to utilize this time period to change, to demand. And so you get stuck in a catatonic caterpillar chrysalis state and never become the butterfly after this Mercury Dasha.
Right.
What keeps you in the caterpillar state? What keeps you in the chrysalis? Well, in 1985, the crack epidemic began. And if you look, isn't it interesting? We've come full circle, haven't we?
Yep.
What do we start in?
K2.
K2. And in the 80s, what hit us?
Crack. Drugs.
What house is K2 placed in? The
12th
12th
house.
house.
Escapism.
It's crazy how this chart aligns perfectly. In the 80s, the crack 80s is the crack era, not the 90s, the 80s.
Yeah.
It decimated us. It decimated our homes, our families, our communities. Family, home, community, what planet is that?
Moon.
Moon. Crazy, isn't it? I mean, I sometimes I sit there and flip like it can't be this dang accurate. It is. It really is. Right. In the 90s. Now, we've always been, as Venus would be, ruling who we are, we've always been musically inclined.
I mean, just musically inclined and inventive, creative.
Sure, absolutely. Creative, sure. Problem solving, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. However, right, even with even with your talents and abilities, those talents and abilities were used like chattel, weren't they?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
So the music industry, the entertainment industry, the sports industry. Oh, wait a minute, sports. What's in the ascendant?
Mars.
Isn't that something? Mars. So we do have an athletic ability as a people, as an
Right.
identity, right? You see what I'm saying? Mars is there. Athleticism, fighting, courage. So it's not like we are just some kind of cow being pulled around. There is some resistance. You have
Mm,
the moon in Aries, right, which is a fighter, but the moon is in the 12th house of not understanding how to integrate the mind with the rest of the how to integrate your mentality with the rest of what you got going on. It's separated.
right.
So even though we fight with who? Each other.
Each other. Yeah.
When we fight, we don't fight to stand for truth. We fight for stand for materialism. We fight for the Gucci. We
So
take
here's the
PNB rocks out. Go ahead.
right. So
A
here's the
father and a
difference.
son. Did you hear that, bro? A father and a son killed him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, man.
See, the difference is because it's true. No, it's not unique. I mean, if you go to any of these countries where a lot of the immigrants come from, you'll see similar type of activity, right? But in the United States, and the kind of model, the unspoken model of the United States is really it's a group, it's a group sport. It's a team sport in the
Right,
United States. It's unspoken, but it's very clear that that's what it is. Everybody's playing for their team.
right,
So they're able, yeah, does it engage? Yeah, but they're able to function in a way to where it's not the focal point. It's not the focal point of their community, their
no, it's
infights.
not.
It's
No,
something that's done behind the scenes, more
right,
subtly, but
but not
they
overtly.
really focus hardcore to make sure that it's not the narrative. You
Right,
know,
exactly, exactly. So, you know, Mars in the ascendant shows a strong, determined type of people.
hmm
We are very strong and determined, but but our, so we need a rebirth. Is really what we're saying here, folks. Right? We need a rebirth. We need to recalibrate. And I mean, looking at it, we talk about the dashas. Venus is in play until 2008. Do you realize how much impact music and entertainment has on the world? Not in necessarily it hasn't had it, but remember,
we
Venus
got
rides all the way over until the internet is created. So remember 2008, right? Music and entertainment from a black perspective is where we're making headway.
see, and here's the thing, right? Because
Hmm.
back in the 40s, the 50s, 60s, 70s, where we were just as musically talented, impacting, but we wasn't making the money from it. Those artists were relatively broke, with an exception of a few, right? Um, and also a
Right.
lot of stuff was taken from a lot of those artists back then. You know, your
Oh
Chuck
man, they
Berrys
were
and all those
robbed.
different things. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So from in this Venus dasha, what you see is an actual ability to
To
gain,
reap the benefit,
reap
right?
the benefits.
Boom. Told
You
y'all he's
know,
good as me, y'all. Don't let him play
nah,
y'all,
man. I'm
right?
just,
He
I'm
see he breaking it down. He's absolutely right. We reap the benefit. We gain some type of substantiability from it.
right.
And it's in the 11th house of what?
Gains
Exalted, isn't it? Yeah.
exalted. It even has Neptune in there.
I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like, that's we're one of the richest nations in the world as a people.
Right.
Our income is bit trillions. Look at the
I mean,
income. What
that's
house rules income?
second house.
No, income.
Oh, 11th house.
We make a whole lot of money, don't we? We're a money maker, aren't we?
Right.
But we're not a money saver. We don't have a banking structure. We don't have a value. Isn't that interesting? You don't have a value of saving money as a people. See, contrasting with the Jews. Go look at their chart, see if they got a value of saving money. Or you'll find it. But with us, right? Second Lord is in the eighth, constantly
Yeah.
changing your what? Values.
Values. Yeah.
Black people are always in flux with regards to what we consider as important. But the one thing that we always consider important is that almighty what? That dollar.
Dollar.
That's the theme. Taurus is the theme. Within the theme, there's sub themes. The sub theme of the second and the eighth is despite you may be adamant about making or acquiring some type of wealth, you don't know how to handle it. I know it hurts, but it's the truth. You don't we don't know we don't know what wealth really is. You think it's in this. No, Venus is not real wealth. Venus is money. And we are money
Cash.
people. Cash, right? Coin.
Yeah.
Jupiter is real wealth.
Right.
Wealth, not money. So understanding this, right? I mean, you got to add it in, right? We really don't understand how to function with regards to the income, the amass amount of trillions of dollars we can, I think we're the sixth largest GDP. I mean, it's massive. The black people, trillions of dollars, y'all.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying? It's not because we can't, it's because you don't know how. And that second lord in the eighth damages family life, it damages communications, it damages education, it damages all kinds of things, right? To stop you from becoming a nation or a conglomerate of solid people. Everyone else that comes here has a land except you.
Right.
See, this used to be Mexico, right? Where I sit used to be
Yeah.
Mexico.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Go if
Colorado.
y'all don't watch history, you know, sometimes it used to laugh. I used to laugh at kids when I was younger because I understood the value of history. I didn't
Right.
necessarily like get into it, but I understood it would teach me something. And one of the things is that we don't read history. When you study the Mexican American War, you learn a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Mexican American War, go just research the time frames and how everything happened and how the United States actually owned Mexico. The United States owned Mexico at one point. And you know what they said? You can have it back. Too much cultural differences. That's what they said.
Hmm.
You can have it back. So Mexico used to be a part of America. So you see what I'm saying? Like, in the Mexicans that come over, do you think they don't have a value system? It's unspoken though, isn't it?
Right.
See what I'm saying? Like they have a value. It'd be I don't know how you would, but it would be interesting to see something that would line with them. I think maybe even the Mexican American War might be something we could look at some point. But nonetheless, that whole exchange, right? There was a lot of things traded, sold, and all that, but none of them were dealing in chattel. None of them were chattel slaves. Only Africans in America, people of African descent, have this dynamic around the world.
Right.
So when you look at us, our communication, for example, Mercury, we're not a very technical people, y'all. I hate to say it like that. We are very inventive, yes, when it comes to technology. When Asians come over, a lot of times, especially from India, they go right to IT, don't they?
Right.
Right? They go right to IT. Why IT? Because they understand that computers earn everything. That's a value, isn't it?
It is. There's
We don't,
I mean, but there's a stark difference though because they,
of course. Oh, major difference.
yeah, because they have a
Of a culture.
yeah, their mission is different.
Absolutely.
Um,
They come
and
over, they take it, they send it back.
right, right.
We
So
ain't sending
when
nothing
it when it
nowhere.
when it for them they have like, all right, we have a culture, but it's a different, you know what I mean? It's a different, um there's levels to it. You understand what I'm saying? So like, whereas India now,
India,
India,
yeah.
shout out to our Indian people out there, but like in the country, I mean, there's a whole lot of problems in India. There's
Oh,
stuff
you
going
think
on in
there
India
ain't?
that ain't going on in Black America.
All
All right,
kind of issues in India.
right. I mean, water,
But when
everything. I
they
mean, it's
step foot in America,
yeah,
there's a plan.
it's a simple, calculus for them, right?
Very simple. Yes. Very
But it's
simple.
different when you're there and you're in the belly of the beast and you have nowhere else to go.
My point exactly,
It's a
brother.
different calculus.
My point exactly. My point exactly.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? So we're a different creature. And you can
Hmm.
see it. You can see it. The 12th Lord is in the what? It's in the ascendant,
It's
isn't
in
it?
the yeah, it's in the first.
So wandering, homelessness, indigence comes to black people. I'd be like, wow, really, Raleigh? It's like that? Yeah, right. Marriage is a big piece of our thing. And I'm not going to say marriage, I'm just going to say relationships.
Hmm.
Because the seventh Lord is in the ascendant. And all the music, right? Back in the day, before hip hop, everything was baby, baby, baby. Hip hop kind of broke the mold, thankfully, because when hip hop really did originally start, when it really dropped, it was about waking us up. Of course, it's
Right.
co opted in the 90s, right? And you're used as a chattel or a cow to maneuver, right? You from potentially having a voice to now the voice being solely focused on the lower aspect of reality and trinkets. Most music now is focused on low level, low grade, low energy stuff. And they know the power of music when it comes to people, especially black people. We are ruled by Venus as a people in this context. And so it makes sense that you would use that they're ruled by to use it against them, to use it as a means to stopping them from becoming independent. And so this is not the mindset, the mentality, the modus operandi, the way we're doing things, it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get any better. We have to recalibrate, y'all. We have to really stop and say, okay, wait a minute. Materialism, money is needed, but how do we create the money, not make the money? There's a difference. See, Europeans make money. I mean, they create money, excuse me. They create
Mm-hmm.
money. We make money. There's a difference. When you create money, you create things that are whole industries. What is our industry? Please share with me, brother. What is our industry? What would you assert our industry is?
The industry that we've been able to just consistently participate in is the entertainment industry.
Carte blanche.
Yeah.
But how? But if you don't control it, you don't distribute it. Now it has changed. You're right. You are
Mm-hmm.
dead on that one, man. That is changed. So now you can become your own, but it's still a fight. It's still not easy for you to get in. I mean, how many rappers are there now? It's ridiculous. But I
Right.
mean, how many everybody wants to be in entertainment, it seems like. So yeah, we I don't know, I'm not gonna say we locked that down, but we definitely have a foothold in the music industry. We just need to take over the entertainment industry, including sports.
Sports, film, and it's
Right.
like yeah, I mean it's in the music industry it's happened to a certain degree, right? There's a lot of people
To a
who
certain degree. Right.
carved out ownership models from your Master P's, you know,
Right.
your Birdmans and you know Jay
Dr.
Princes
Dre's
of
and
the
all of that.
world.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
a little bit of Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre, he has his own to a certain degree. You know,
But Suge
Rockefeller
Knight was a beast
era.
though. Suge was
Yeah,
no
Suge
joke.
Knight, Suge. You know, so
Yeah.
you know Jay and stuff like that. You know, you've seen the ownership model start rising. I mean, even when you see, you know, even what Kevin Hart's doing and you know, Tyler Perry, different people are starting to, you know, you're starting to see people carve out that ownership model, but it's like they're not the key thing here, and it's not, you know, the key thing is that it's not that we're being quote unquote held down, but you know, there is we're always competing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're competing with the power structure, but all the competition is subtle. So it's like, you know, at any moment they can we have to like, you know, almost get a win when they're not looking. You understand what
Yeah.
I'm saying? To a certain
Mm-hmm.
degree. You know, so you
True.
got to get a win where they're not looking because they can always be pulled under you because of where we're at, it just by not having a place to go, you know, anywhere to, you know, escape. You know, at the end of the day, you know, you can always go back to some other country or something like that. We
You got
don't.
a home.
We haven't established that. So at any point in time, any gains we have can always be snatched from us at the end of the day. So that's really kind of the struggle. That's where the struggle comes from, right? It's like,
True.
hold up, oh no, man, they're starting to get some gains. Let's, you know, let's start playing the game again. You know, and you know, and it's a weird thing because you know that of course the talent is there on all levels, but the talent is there, but that's the missing piece, having an actual, you know, a real place to call your own, like in a real sense, right? I mean, like I said, I mean, this, you know, by proxy, this is our homeland to a certain degree. You understand? But it will never actually ever really be our homeland because, you know, we don't control it.
No.
You know, we don't control
No.
it.
Not at all. So, you know, it's just this chart is here to show you, you know, what is the kind of energy that's moving behind the scenes and through us, and to look at it from a real objective point of view to say, you know, as a people, why are we so materialistic? Why are we so ingrained in the senses? Why do we just want good food and good time and, you know, having fun? Why don't we take things serious? How come we don't? I mean, these are questions I'm saying to myself. You know what I mean? Like, why don't
Mm-hmm.
we move more in a direction of this? How come we don't do what they do? Yeah, I mean, these are questions that if you're a person of any African descent, you should be asking yourself. I'm sure you pondered at some point. Why? Well, when you create something, there's a timestamp on it. This is where the knowledge comes into play as it becomes more integrated in how our people used to do things, right? We created civilizations. We created all kind of different arrangements and models of governance. Now it's time to take this knowledge and to create a people. Well, we had the Million Man March. You were marching as a bull. You were marching as a cattle. Okay.
Right.
You're marching as livestock that was set free, that can roam and eat in the pastures of America. And when we want to take one of you and eat you, we will. There's
Right.
nothing you can do about it. But you can march 1 million people and hope that produces change. But all you're doing is walking. So, you see what I'm saying? We've got to get out of the symbolic, metaphorical, musical mindset and come more into the mindset of self-governance, of responsible reactions, forethought and planning, looking at things deeper than just what is being given. Because there's an old adage, you got to ask 3 questions. Number one, what's being given? Number two, who is it that's been given to? And number three, who stands to gain the most from the sale?
Right.
You bought that Lexus. Who stands to gain the most? You or Lexus? Who stands to gain the most when you don't buy in bulk? Buy in bulk. Go with your neighbors and buy in bulk as if you're buying a store, and then share the cost. We don't think like that though. These are little small things. Doesn't take much, but we do have to recalibrate. We really have to adjust. One last thing is interesting. Isn't it interesting that we had a black president, right,
Mm-hmm.
in 2009? And what dasha did we begin shortly after?
The
The sun
sun.
dasha, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, when he actually went into office, it was the sun dasha. When he actually took office, it was sun dasha.
Yep. You had a opportunity to see a ruler, a king. What, he
Right,
didn't
but it
work
was
for you,
still,
but he
yeah. I
was one
mean,
of you,
no.
but he didn't work
Well,
for you.
yeah.
But here's the ironic piece, and we're going to tie it up here in just a second. What is the relationship between Black America and America? America's chart is I'm gonna say is Sagittarius ascendant.
Right.
As Taurus ascendant, if we count from Sagittarius to Taurus, how many spaces do we end up at from Sag?
From Sag to Taurus,
Yeah.
7. I mean, 8.
You sure? From Sag
6.
to Taurus.
6, 6, 6, 6.
So that means that America takes you as a what?
Servant.
Or an
Labor.
enemy.
Or enemy. Hey, yeah, that too.
Right? Now you know, right? And you know it before, but now it's been heavenly articulated that you are enemy of the state. Yeah, you are enemy of the state. And as enemy of the state, we treat you as criminals to keep you subdued, to keep you in check, and to keep you confused. Why is
Yeah,
it that the most of the prison system, half of the prison system is made up of people of African descent, but you only make up a small percentage of the populace because you are an enemy of the what? The state.
the state.
When you become a participant in the penal system, you are now what of the state?
Property.
Damn. Ain't that Taurus ascendant?
Absolutely.
So, folks, right? We can probably do a part two to this, right? To really get into some more nooks and
Mm-hmm.
crannies. I know Jupiter is in the seventh. People say, what about marriage, Ra? We try to get married. But the marriage is focused on what? Materialism.
Materialism. Yeah.
We
The
try to
outer versus the, the
out
look
of
of
birth
it versus,
exactly.
yeah,
You
versus the
got it.
substance of it.
Yeah. That's where we're focused. The seventh Lord is in Taurus. The
And
seventh Lord is in Rohini.
right. The important thing to look at it is when we put it in, look at it astrologically, and we have a chart that we're referencing. It's important to keep in mind not to look at how you might be thinking as an individual or how maybe a small group of people might be thinking as an individual. We got to look at how the actual results of how is things playing out, the grand total, right? We know that there's a significant portion of the black population that recognizes this thing about our politicians and criticizes people who are not, who are kind of selling us out or not really doing things on our behalf the right way, right? But at the end of the day, that's what they're doing is the result. You understand? Those are
Right.
what our what we don't. They say we don't have leadership, but everybody has somebody that's leading. We may not like the leadership. We may have not actually vouched and really, put our own leadership in place, but we do have leadership, and that's what our leaders, the people, the people who have been designated to be the spokespersons and the gatekeepers of the black community. This is the total of what they're doing, right?
Right. Right. Exactly.
So
And
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead. No, you
I'm
got it.
just saying forewarned is forearmed,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, you've been equipped with knowledge and you can see yourself in the mirror as a people. That's what this is all about. To look in the mirror and say why? Where am I? What am I doing? What am I bringing to myself? What am I identifying as? Identity is a big part of how you function. We identify as slaves, as former slaves, as the descendants of slaves,
Mm-hmm.
not as kings and queens as we think. Can't have served two masters. So what are
Right.
you? Are you descendants of kings and queens? Or are you descendants of slaves? Most in their subconscious, slaves. A king and a queen has a value system, don't they?
Right.
Values in the black community, they're almost, I'm not saying non-existent. They were existent
Mm-hmm.
when we were going through our process of changing into who we're becoming now. In the Saturn Dasha, you had morals, didn't you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You had restrictions. You had a dress code. You didn't go out the house looking crazy. You didn't have a bonnet on your head, right? You didn't walk around with your slippers, and there was a decorum. There was rules. Now it's a free for all. But
Right.
this is why the state of the black community, the black nation, is constantly every year getting worse and worse and worse. At some point, that moon in the 12th house is going to bring us to a point of being on your knees because you don't have anything that, as a people, to move you in a direction to become a people. I think, and it's not that we were better off, but we were more on point when we were in slavery. It's a crazy thing to think, but
Or
you
let's say
had
prior to not just slavery, but prior to civil rights.
prior to, exactly, yes, better stated, right, prior to civil rights, right, there was something about you as a black person that made you want to do something good for yourself and your people. But remember, the Mercury's in what house?
Hey,
So when you were given, right, this freedom, what ensued? Confusion.
responsible.
Yeah. You didn't know what to do with yourself.
Right.
And they did. They said, well, 1985, we going to drop off a little white rock called crack. And good luck. Hope you survive it. So, you see what I mean? Like, we really have to recalibrate. We need to reassess, re and we can use this model and still get out of it. You can still use what we have and still change. It's just a matter
Yeah.
of knowing that you must change. You must come out of this
So
material mindset.
right. But with that being said, leveraging this chart, right? Would you say that as far as the we went into more of the kind of psychological aspect or spiritual aspect to a certain degree, depending on how you look at spirituality, of being able to get out of the situation. But as far as the actual industrial aspect of it, would you still say it's going through that realm of entertainment?
That's the theme.
Right.
That's the theme. That's where you do best. Sending Lord in the 11th, social networks, groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
You lead them, don't you?
Right.
You're the trendsetter, right?
Yeah.
But then what do you do with it?
With the when you set the trend, that's the key.
That's the key,
That
right?
the back
What
part.
trend are you setting is the key.
Right.
Where are you coming from when you set the trend? You're coming from Mars in the ascendant,
Mm-hmm.
in Taurus.
So with
Think
that being
about
said,
just think about that for a second and watch what you look at the clothing.
mm-hmm.
Look at the messages. It's Mars and Taurus. Yeah, you got the power to give them change and maneuver people. You can make all kind of money. But then what? And how are you going to make it? Because it's affecting your people in a negative way, not a positive. So when it was the reverse, when we had Public Enemy, KRS-One, Paris, EPMD, being Rakim, you see what I'm saying? That's and of course, like you said, we weren't getting any money from it then, but we were getting something out of it, weren't we? You see the trick? You got the
Mm-hmm.
money, but you didn't get nothing with what you have. You didn't have the money, but you were making progress. So isn't it seemingly that the money becomes the trick, the carrot trick, and that you're chasing, chasing, chasing? And if you just stop chasing and say, wait a minute, I can make them chase me if I just control the trends. I control what I put out. I control, but that again takes a different value system.
Right.
And your value system has to be destroyed and remade. That is what Mercury in the eighth house is also saying. So we're going to have to face some perilous things to come out of a chrysalis into a rebirth, into a butterfly stage. But
So
again, we've
let's
seen 120 years of straight, a whole cycle, right? Now we're going to see
mm-hmm.
another 120 years. What are we going to do with the next 120 years to change and recalibrate ourselves into a viable people? When I say viable, we have entertainment. We also have economics. We have medicine. We have tech. I mean, when do we start waking up and just making those areas our own, competing at a high level as far as STEM is concerned, right? Like really pushing the envelope. Taurus don't like to do that. Taurus has to have a cattle prod, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Well, the cattle prod is coming. It's coming. But hopefully it won't be too late, because by that time, would you even consider yourself a people? So, you know, that being said, we can do a part two to this and get into some the nuances, right?
Real, real,
But for the
real
most
quick.
part, I think we've done a good job of really honing in on what we're looking at as a potential nation and as a people.
Real quick.
Mhm.
Before we close it out, next couple dashers. We're
Yeah,
in the
we're
moon
in a
dasher
moon
right
dasha
now.
now, right?
Right. And moon dasher ends in 2026. At the end of 2025, we go into
Hmm.
the Mars dasha. What do you see in these upcoming, just immediate future in regards to, you know, where we're at? Because there's a lot of moving parts right now. A lot of different things are happening. You know.
I really see Mars as a means of really moving into a space of competing, but I think really it'll be more of the same, but slightly different. Meaning, Mars is of course sports, right? Its dominance is um, taking action, is pushing forward, and we will for that short, brief period of 7 years. But how we push again is back to the basics. Is back to being pushed. Is pushing again around, and you got to consider economics in the next few years, the potential of war,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whenever this country goes to war, right, black people have a different process. We change to a degree. We start kind of getting patriotic. But I think what will happen is that when these things begin to unfold as a people, we will actually begin to somewhat pull back and ask the question: do we, or is this really best serving us best by going to war, by engaging in these things? I think because we've been around the bush, the mulberry bush, so many times, we've had so many tragedies with, just the loss of life with the authorities and things like that, which is Mars.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a strong possibility that black people will start to um, take the fight more personally. I think communities will take more of a concerted effort to stop certain things. I think gang violence will um, not dwindle, but it's beginning to die off, and you'll start to see even in the inner cities and the elders and the OGs calm it down to a great degree, because that's what's happening now. In my era, right, when you were doing the street thing, it was nothing like what it is now, and the youth are not guided. So I think Mars will be a point in which we begin to try to take charge of those types of scenarios, police brutality, fighting in our own neighborhoods, killing each other, harming each other. Those types of things will become more on our radar, not to say
Hmm.
their radar, but our radar. And I think we will start to try to come up with some ideas, maybe not solutions, but ideas that can be put forward to try to curb the violence. They try to curb, these senseless, transactions of gunfire and gunplay. It's
Right.
actually getting now to the point in it, and not even close to what it used to be, y'all. But and I'm not one to promote violence in any means, but it's getting back to the fisticuff some in a little way, right? Like fight it out. Don't go. You ain't got to kill each other, right? Settle like two adults.
Well,
That
I,
is, it's me. It's leaning towards a little bit, but it's not, of course, not there by a long shot. But I'm saying, excuse me, as time progresses, I think we're gonna see that the pain and the heartache that we've endured as a people from our own violence upon ourselves is gonna change. Not stop, but it's gonna be to the point where we're gonna have to really take the the quote unquote bull by the
by his
horns,
horns.
right?
Yeah.
And deal with this because
Because
the yeah, go ahead.
well, I mean, right now we're seeing kind of a peak in it, especially with high profile people, and I think that
Right.
that'll be the catalyst of what you're talking about,
True.
right?
True.
Because I mean, it's violent. I mean, I live in Atlanta; it's definitely violent,
Hmm.
and other cities like that is violent, but because it's happening in such a public way, like back in the '90s, it was happening, but it was happening to people only the streets knew, right?
Right.
Just
Right.
one they were high profile people, but high profile people in the streets. So that's why you
Hmm.
see like platforms like Vlad TV and stuff like that. A lot of these people, they're getting out of prison and they're blowing up now. But back in the day, they were only large to their hood, to
Right. You're
to
right.
their locale.
Yep.
You know, but
Yeah.
now the violence is being enacted on actual notable people that we all know.
Hmm.
So I think that
Hmm.
that could be like, that will be like the catalyst for what you're talking about.
Right. That's what I see.
Hmm.
As things really start to, you know, your major people being, the big wigs being not big wigs in the sense of money, but who we are, right? It's gonna come to not a halt, but it's gonna come to a head. Let's say that, right? It's gonna come to a head. The violence and the aggression towards one another. It won't stop, but it will come to a head. It'll start to become more examined, right? And I think black people, even though the music is partly to blame, right? The movies, I mean, you gotta, just take for example, colors.
Hmm.
Did colors stop gang banging, or did it increase it?
Oh, it turned it up. It it turned it up.
Does MCA stop gang banging, or does he increase it? You
He
mean
increases
we
it.
gotta stop and just think for a second. The
Hmm.
music, I'm a reporter. No, you are an espouser. You're a promoter of these things. Well, I'm not promoting. I'm just rapping about it. But you're rapping it from first person, as if you are the constituent. I mean,
And
one thing
today they
about Ice
are.
Cube, I could always say he did rap in the third person about the events that took
Hmm.
place. He never necessarily really him. He was kind of a ghetto reporter, right? But even still, you have to be careful. There's a slippery slope.
Well, today
So
they
as
they
a
are
people,
they are
go
they're
ahead.
speaking from first person and actually first person. Like they this is
They have
they
right.
detailing the
And guess
exact
what, y'all?
crime.
Since they've been doing that, right? They telling on this stuff, right?
Right.
The hip hop police. I said, no, there's no such thing. There really is, y'all. There's a
Oh
there
yeah,
in they have
yeah,
That's crazy how they sit there and listen to your lyrics and go find the murders.
yeah. Jeez.
Crazy, right? Right. So, we got a long way to go, right? And if
Yeah.
we really do want to change, we're going to have to stop and remake ourselves as a people. Does it likely happen? No. Farrakhan is older. He's about to, I'm sure, make his transition within the next period of time. Our, excuse me, people that were around during the civil rights are old and antiquated. So, what's next? We used to have the state of the black nation. I used to watch those. We don't have them anymore, but at least we talked about it. Now we don't even talk about it. Now there's not even a conversation, not even an idea with our leaders that kind of bind us to that period. Farrakhan connects us to that period. Certain Dick Gregory connects us to that period. These are the people that are leaving us, and so it's up
Hmm.
to like me and you, brothers like us, and people that are of the same mindset to continue to carry the torch and to hopefully push the envelope with the development spiritually, economically, right, and any other lead you want to think of as far as black people. It's going to take more of an individual and communal effort instead of a national effort to change who we are. And once we begin to do that on a small level, I think maybe at some point down the line during Jupiter Dasha, we might do it on a large level.
Yeah, I think film plays a major role because,
Absolutely, man. That's what I say.
in the
Color.
I mean, because the reason why, because music, it's hard to change. Like I think a part of like the way that we're used to hearing music now, that habit's gonna get. It's hard to break that. Like what
Yeah,
what we're
it's
used to hearing
ingrained.
in the music, it's hard to
Yeah,
break that. But
it's
film,
ingrained.
people are not like, oh, I don't want to see a inspiring film. I don't want to see a film that has these elements. They don't have the same, like it got to be gangster. You understand? You know what I mean?
Right,
With
right.
films, people still have an open mind, a wider palette when it comes to the films that they digest versus the music that they digest. Like everybody don't want to listen to, you know, want to listen to jazz or even Kendrick Lamar. He's looked at as one of the top MCs, but everybody don't want to listen to him. You understand what I'm saying? Like they like
Sure.
it,
But
but they don't want to spend their
movies,
days
yeah,
listening to them
yeah,
all day. But with a film, it's different.
yeah, it is. That's a good way of putting it, and I think because you definitely, brother, are in that line, in that light, right? One of those that can be a filmmaker that can change, right, or maybe tap into the pulse of our people and put something on our minds, make
Right.
make us really think and look at things from an alternative perspective. So excellent, is that we have you as a filmmaker to produce those kind of films, and hopefully we can get money behind you to promote those types of films in a large way. But you're right. You know, it's almost like the snake that you almost have to have a little bit of the hair of the dog that bit you
Mm-hmm.
to be able to come out of this. And so,
Yeah.
film definitely is one of those things that can assist. So, yeah,
And it had a role to bring us in on a bunch of levels. Even Birth of a Nation,
right,
the original one, that
right,
that
right,
that
right.
spurred Jim Crow.
Sure did, sure did. Yeah, you're right. But we got to get to the movies that stop us from just doing this, right?
Hmm.
And start us really, locking arms and doing things as a community. And movies, like you said, entertainment, especially the visual effects of it, can change the thought process. So definitely, I agree there, my brother, for
Indeed,
sure.
indeed. Yeah, we definitely got to do multiple
A part two,
iterations of this.
yeah,
Yeah, part two, part three, part four, part five. We might even do
we
do
might just
some.
do a State of the Union, right? Check in.
We might could do something on Patreon, man, and go into some things that we probably wouldn't go into
Be able
in
to
a
say on
public.
here. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely look out. That's gonna be interesting earful, right?
Indeed. Big up to that. All right, as usual, this episode is brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group, Caliprucia Astrology, and our good people over there on Patreon. Thank you all for tuning in. This was the season finale of season 5, episode 125. I think we'll be coming back relatively soon because we've already kind of like
Mm.
by
We'll be
proxy
back.
taking a break.
Yeah.
But definitely be tuned. You're gonna see some differences with the way that we start doing these shows and stuff like that. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Rod, you got anything you want to say to the people before we?
Just been a great season. We've covered a lot of great ideas, concepts, and topics. You're not going to find this type of material or discussions on any other platform. So you definitely want to spread the word and try to, in the meantime, when we are in the process of creating a whole new season and a whole new series of topics, spread the word and get it out so that people can enjoy these types of conversations and you all can enjoy them as well while you watch them. Um, I'm fairly pleased with what we've done this season, and I know next season is going to be even greater. So just be patient with us, right? We do appreciate you walking out with us because we're both very busy individuals. Taking this time out of our day definitely is something that is becoming harder and harder for both of us. But at the same time, right, we're here to continue, to push and promote this type of information on the YouTube platform and the other platforms that we're on.
Mhm.
So, by all means, continue to tune in. There's old material, like my brother said. You can always go back and find something that you may have missed or may even watch again and get something different from it. So, while we're kind of doing our thing to bring you some more materials, some more good stuff, stay tuned in, watch what we have. And then, of course, spread the word and share. We definitely appreciate it.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, shoot, like you can pretty much listen to this podcast for a whole week straight,
Hmm.
24 hours a day. We got a week worth of content.
Nice.
Oh, so
Nice.
indeed,
Definitely.
indeed. So yeah, before we get out of here, make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you can know when new content is dropping. And with that being said, I want to thank you all for tuning in, and definitely share this one. This is a very unique show. Share this with your people. Let's get that. Make sure you liking it. I mean, really, honestly, I mean, when you watch it, make sure you like it because that's one of the most important metrics. As far as in the YouTube algorithm that gets these episodes out. Definitely like, and then comment because in my other channel, definitely go subscribe to the First We Build podcast. It's growing fast because it gets a lot of likes. So make sure when you come in here, if you watch it, make sure you like it. If you haven't subscribed, it's all free. Hit that subscribe button, all right? But with that being said, again, thank you all for tuning in. And this has been episode 125 overall. And you guys be safe out there. Be wise. And we will be back with another great episode, season 6, coming soon. All right? We're out. Peace.